going, everyone? We're going to be talking about sports and NFTs, the crossover between those two things. This is, I guess, more broadly in terms of Web3 and sports, a marriage that's been happening for probably about 4 or 5 years now, whether it be sponsorships, fan tokens, DAOs, and so on and so forth. But today we're going to be talking about NFTs, and I'm joined by a very amazing host of people to do so. Before I introduce them, my name is Petrit Berisha. I run the Sporting and Crypto newsletter. I'm also the consulting head of Web3 at Copper 90. Joining me today, Brandon Mason, Crawley Town. Yeah. You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everybody. Brandon Mason, professional football player for Crawley Town, which is actually owned by WAGMI United, which is a Web3 ownership group as well. I'm also a co-founder of a Web3 startup, which is an athletic shoe brand, bringing both function and fashion to the market, which is super exciting to build, to be honest.
Amazing. Not busy at all then. We're also joined by Joanna Rindell from Onefootball.
Hi everyone. Nice to be here. I'm Joanna from Onefootball. Onefootball is a sports media app. We recently launched our NFT platform where we bring digital collectibles to the football fans.
Awesome. And Tim Mangnall from Capital Block Media.
Hi, I'm Tim. I'm CEO of Capital Block. We're a Web3 consulting agency and tech platform for leading sports organisations such as AS Monaco and Galatasaray and other football clubs across Europe.
Awesome. And last by no means least, Harriet Browning from Consensys.
Afternoon, everyone. Harriet Browning. So I lead the business development for the Web3 ecosystem at Consensys. And I spend my days talking to Web3 founders, creators, innovators in the space, but also increasingly Web2 platforms, luxury brands, and sports organizations who are looking to try and implement Web3 Rails as part of their business strategy. Bit on Consensys, so we're the leading blockchain software company, and we essentially provide tools, infrastructure, and products for developers to build applications on public blockchains like Ethereum, but also EVM networks like Polygon, Arbitrum, Optimism, and others. And we also are the home of the MetaMask wallet, which is the leading Web3 wallet. We've got 30 million monthly active users of that wallet, and it's really the way for most users and organizations to kind of connect to Web3 and engage in all the different areas of the Web3 economy, from NFTs, DAOs, and decentralized finance.
Amazing, thank you. I'm going to start with asking our panel about the relationship between NFTs and sport to date. So, Tim, I'll start with you. Let's talk about the positives first, because I think we could be here for a long time if we talk about the negatives only. What have you seen that's excited you to date when it comes to sports and NFTs?
I think from sports NFTs perspectives, who've done it very well to this point is your Dapper Labs, your Top Shots, your Onefootball, who've really looked at more of a league-wide approach to NFTs and really looking at those highlights, those moments, those goals, which is really what attracts most football fans or the love of football fans to football. You want to see those really, really exciting bits. And I think that's been done really, really well from, as I said, the likes of Top Shot, the likes of Onefootball. I think from a club perspective, we've still got a very, very long way to go for football fans to really engage with their clubs around NFTs. And that's actually not the fault of really the football fans. If anything, the blame lays with a football club, because there's not enough education in this space that is coming from the clubs. And I think you look at a club like Liverpool, when they did their NFT drop, albeit it was spoken about in the press that it was very, very negative, they did badly, they only sold 5%. But when you actually look under those numbers, someone, not sure who, advised them to do 171,000 NFTs in one drop. and that would be the best-selling NFT project pretty much in one go ever. Yet they still sold just over 11,000, and they still netted just over 1.2 million gross, or gross revenue 1.2. So as a positive, they brought on just over 11,000 people that hadn't been in this space. But because they didn't put education behind it, there was a real negative space. So I think, to go back to your original question, I think you're seeing some of the bigger companies from a league level really do it, and you're seeing some big companies and big sports organizations over in the States. But from a European football sports perspective, there's not a huge amount to talk about from a massive positive at the moment.
Brandon, you're nodding your head there, so I'd love to hear your thoughts first and foremost on the positive side of things when it comes to NFTs and sports.
The positive side of things, being a part of Crawley Town and the WAGMI United group as well. We're actually building the first internet football team, which has been super exciting. The positive side of things is that it actually enables fans' voices to be heard. So being a player and hearing fans yelling in the crowd, normally negative things, on a good day for winning 3-0, positive things, but actually allowing fans to be involved with the club on potential decisions, which actually has happened already within Crawley Town. So one of those decisions, for example, during the transfer market, the club needed to decide on what position was needed within the football club to help take us forward. So the fans actually had a say in that decision, which was super cool. And they were really grateful for that opportunity as well, because without that platform, through NFTs and what the WAGMI United ownership group did, their voices would just be unheard. So the fact of, that possibility is now being enabled through WAGMI United is really positive.
I definitely want to ask some questions about being a player and seeing all this stuff fly through the gates so quickly, because from my perspective, I've spoken to a lot of agents, a lot of friends of players, and at the kind of peak euphoric part of this cycle, they were being offered kind of 7 to 10 deals a week, which sounds crazy, but it's the reality of it. And I'm sure we'll talk about that throughout this panel. But Joanna, I'd love to hear your thoughts as well. Obviously, Onefootball really involved in this space in a big way. Where have the positives come from over the last few years?
I think from for us, having been in the, or being still a sort of Web 2 application for football fans, really, the positive things that we hope to see is really to bring more engagement to the fans. So definitely allowing the fans to be more a part of the football experience. So by owning the digital collectibles, we give them more ownership. And also, I know this is something that Tim has also been talking about before, but everything that you can connect as well, the added value you can give to a user, also owning not only a digital collectible, but let's say, you get tickets to a game, you get merchandise, you get a jersey. It can also be so much more engagement than even beyond the digital collectible. So the digital collectible can really enable the fans to, get so much more out of the experience.
And from yourself?
So I think, creating a Web3 strategy around NFTs, especially for Web 2 companies, is really not easy. And landing that strategy, I really just applaud every company that's gone down that road, because I think we have to acknowledge that we're very early in this space. And at the moment, a lot of what is happening is really experimental and trying to figure out what the technology is that you need, what you should be building, and then testing that thesis out with your fans and seeing what they enjoy and what they don't enjoy, and then taking that feedback and taking it on. So I think, there are negatives, but all of this is really part of a big learning process, and we're really very much at the beginning of it.
And speaking of learning, I guess, over that kind of same period of time, what are some of the, I guess, more negative things that we've seen, but more importantly, things that we should be learning from as an industry, I guess, between sports and NFTs?
Sure. So I think there are many ways to kind of answer this question, and lots of things we can look at. I think, firstly, starting with the kind of obvious things around education. and onboarding of fans into this experience. It's entirely new for them as well. So clearly a lot of work is still to be done, and there's a lot of friction still, downloading a wallet, converting your fiat to crypto, transferring that to your wallet, purchasing your NFT, all the kind of anxiousness and the moments that go through that around, are you going to get rug pulled? Is it a scam? It's terrifying, I think, for the everyday mainstream user. So we need to do more to build better products and tools to remove a lot of the frictions and make it easier for the onboarding process for fans. I think, that's an obvious learning that we can take away. And then I think, to look at it from a different angle, how do we better support brands, sporting brands, sports organizations in how they build their strategy and understanding the value proposition of Web3 and what a fan experience looks like. And I think there's been so much activity over the last couple of years, so much money and hype in this space. It's inevitable that a lot of brands, sports organizations want to kind of capture that value. But a lot of them look at it through a kind of commercialization of IP playbook that they're familiar with, but that doesn't always work and translate well into Web3. And so I think another learning is maybe we need to think more about building a fan-first experience and take guidance from what our fans and the feedback we're getting from our fans.
I think that's so well said on the IP point especially. I think rights holders have sometimes misunderstood just how this is going to work and where the value adds. And I think value extraction is basically the only thing that's tried to be done by a lot of these club sports organisations. And I think, Tim, to your point, a lot of them have gotten some bad advice. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on maybe the negatives and where that side of things can improve as well.
Yeah, I think fundamentally football clubs are very much around money. We know that they're driven by revenue. We know that they have to earn revenue. They are businesses at the end of the day. But I think from an NFT perspective and from a Web3 perspective, when we look at really where NFTs came from, when we look even back into the old days when the OGs were buying CryptoPunks, when they first came out, people were buying that not because it was a CryptoPunk, because if you actually look at the art, they're not buying it for the high quality of the art. They're buying it because they believed in that technology, in blockchain technology, and they wanted to own that. And so then what football clubs have there, and then it so happened that then CryptoPunks and apes went on to be the value that they were and make millionaires overnight. But so what the football clubs then did is they see that there's all that money and they're going, let me take that strategy and let me just implement that to football fans. But then that was a strategy for crypto tech enthusiasts. That doesn't work for football fans. So I think the football clubs, as Harriet's just said, I think the football clubs need to really understand why they're going to do that. And that should really be the question that they're asking first. Why are we going to do it? Because if revenue and working with a third party is your number one basis, especially if you take a mid-tier football club, the revenue that they may get from the third party is fine as a club perspective, but then the pressure that puts on that third party to sell those NFTs when there's not a huge demand for NFTs in the marketplace at the moment, it almost makes it impossible for that for that third party to survive. So I think clubs need to really ask that question, why? And then how do we build this community from the ground up? Because we're talking to a digital-centric, younger demographic. It's not going to be everyone, and that's okay, but let's work our way up. Let's understand why, and that's really the advice that clubs should be taking. And if they focus on revenue, they take that revenue from a third party, then the third party's focused on revenue, saying, I need to sell 1,000 NFTs. And if you have a club that's got an average of 1 million fan base, the truth of that matter is you'd be lucky if 1,000 of them will go and buy an NFT drop. And that's fundamentally a big issue.
I think, exactly. I mean, understanding your fan segmentation or your audience segmentation. So are you trying to do this drop specifically for crypto natives who love to collect things that are, technologically innovative or creative? And that's super hard to land as well, because crypto native, Web3 people, they don't want to have a rinse repeat of an NFT drop. Once something's been done, they want to see the next creative, innovative way of doing an NFT drop. And so copying those kind of methods doesn't work out so well. And then if you're kind of appealing to your real fans, your authentic fans, well, then you've got to offer them an authentic experience. And so that kind of crypto approach might not work well for them. So I think that's like a huge important thing. And the other thing I would also say is like understanding what is an awareness asset, and when you want to kind of create a sponsorship deal or commercialization of your IP around awareness assets versus creating like a fan experience. And the type of NFT drop that you might do, I think tagging NFTs into awareness assets is a bit of a dangerous road because fans ultimately don't want to feel like they're part of a commercialization deal. And it's how you ultimately leave your fans feeling that, stays with them.
Yeah, really well said from both of you. I think there is a lot to be done there. I think from a research perspective, from an actual target audience perspective, like who are you trying to sell to? Do you even need to sell these things? What use cases are they going to allow to the fan that weren't able to be done before? Do you need to use blockchain technology? I think all of these questions, sometimes when I look at some of these projects, haven't been answered appropriately. But I want to move to ask you, Joanna, when you've had some of these conversations with sports teams, how have they been like over the last, I say, 3 to 6 months when the market's been a bit more depressed, both Web3 broadly, but particularly in the NFT volume side of things? Is it hard to try and temper those expectations sometimes? And what have you been trying to say to encourage those conversations?
That's an excellent question. So when we have been in talks, everyone knows, for example, that we just recently released for everyone to know, our first drop is the Serie A drop. So I'll take the Italian league as an example. It was really interesting to experience that there are definitely those clubs that are much more educated already in the field. There are definitely a lot of education also to be done towards them. It's not so much that they expect huge, maybe, revenue shares to get back, but I mean, still just to kind of set these expectations. And I think also for them to really realize that sometimes, there might be a revenue share to get and sometimes not, a little bit to, or coming back to what Tim also said, like as the third party that, of course, releases the NFTs, there is a revenue to, that to be made for us, but also then for the clubs and so on, and really to educate them in like how much is to be expected is still, it's an education to be made, and really to put expectation management, because I think also for them, because to me really, and sports digital is so much more than just a quick turnaround in cash, and to really get the clubs to understand that the bigger value behind there, like this is a long-term game to be won, and it's a long-term thing to engage all of the fans and so on. It's really not like a quick buck to be made, and really to educate them in that and set the right expectations is, it needs education.
Yeah, I've had a lot of conversations with people in the sports world where they've said, well, Beeple sold this piece of work for $69 million. Like, how do we do that? And Brandon, how hard is it to temper expectations there, maybe not as a player, but in what you're doing outside of Crawley? Like when you're talking to people and the kind of dollar signs are flashing in their eyes, how hard is it to kind of explain, educate, and also kind of temper those?
Well, in my opinion, I just think that if you can create undeniable value to the fans, consumer, that then makes that process a lot easier. But at the moment, across the market, I believe that there isn't enough value demonstrated. So people generally look at NFTs and crypto in a bad light because they see that as, this is potentially just a route to quick money. Whereas if you can create value which actually betters people's experiences in football clubs, in stadiums, etc., I think that process, people would actually want to take that on, but at the moment it's quite negative. So for brands like mine that I'm building at the moment, we're working on creating utility-based product. So that would actually allow people to be incentivized to start moving and being able to earn tokens. So yeah, value is probably the main thing that needs to be pushed into the market.
Yeah, I think when I speak to sports brands, teams, I try and give the example of social media. Some teams were early to it, some were late, some football associations, sports organizations were early and late to it. But by and all, most of them spend a lot of money on marketing via social media. And I think trying to flip the switch there and say, actually for you as a Web2 brand encroaching into this space or trying to kind of make a splash in this space, I think it's also an investment thing. I think the kind of value you create can only be done if appropriate revenue and resources are kind of like pushed towards some of these like strategies. And I think a lot of these teams have, you know, as you were saying before, looked at some of the money that has been made elsewhere and said, we want that and we want to invest and do as little as possible to get there, which I think that kind of perspective will completely change in the future. And I think speaking of the future, that's the kind of topic we'll round up on. So Tim, what are you most excited about in the next, let's say, 18 to 24 months when it comes to NFTs in sport, and why?
I'm most excited, well, hopefully if clubs start to listen to your newsletter, other people on the panel, and actually listen to advice that is being put out there, because as we've just touched on, there's a lot of people in this space that have been advising a lot of clubs and what have you, not necessarily with the best interest of at heart, and we've heard it throughout the day about quick buck and all around money. And so I think if the clubs can start to understand that this needs to be a resources that is built up internally and then worked with your Onefootball, your Consensys, with whoever it may be, but have the fan at heart, then I think we can really create a bond between football clubs and the fans that hasn't been there before. And I think we can create better content, closer content, and we can really drive Web3 and NFTs into creating this really, really strong relationship. So I think I'm most excited to see these clubs start hopefully listening to the advice that they're getting, and then bringing it in-house and having a lot of these NFT Web3 products going through their own channels. They have a community that will do anything for them. They will buy any of their products that they put out on sale. So they need to start utilizing those channels and start talking to those channels. And I'm most excited to see clubs. We don't know where this is going to go. We all want to see this grow. And it could be 1 year, as someone said earlier. It could be 10 years. We don't know when this huge mass adoption is going to happen. I believe it will happen, and I fundamentally am all in on Web3 and NFTs, which is why I have a company that is in this space. But the football fans still have got a little bit of a way to go. And I think when we start changing that narrative, and then we start using the club's channels to bring them in and then educate them and talk to them like fans and not like customers, then we will really see this growth, and that's what I'm excited about.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of friction from football fans when it comes to NFTs. And to be honest with you, I think it's probably correct that friction isn't there for no reason. I do think that, you know, one of those bits of friction being the environmental concerns and now kind of allayed slightly, which is a positive. But I think there are still a lot of football fans that think they're getting ripped off, think that NFTs and crypto are a scam. And I think it might be a generational thing, right? There's going to be a lot of work that needs to be done from sports organizations and teams to kind of educate and convince that this is a good thing for them as well as the club. But at the same time, you know, you see all those headlines and stories that babies think that newspapers are broken iPads, and potentially the newer generation of fans are those that clubs and associations and leagues should be targeting early on. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, Joanna, on the kind of future, like the next 2 to 3 years. What are you most excited by?
In the next 2-3 years, I'm actually really excited about seeing, hopefully, which I do believe, more like fan adoption and definitely sort of, yeah, I don't know, I'm somehow excited to be there when we start cracking it, like when we start building a product that, or like when we actually crack that code of what does the product need to look like for it to be able to be easily adopted by the fans, to like what is it that we still need to innovate in order for the whole space not to be so scary anymore. Like how does that all need to look like? Because I'm 100% sure that someone will crack that and someone will like come up with these easy to adopt tools. And of course, we're already very far with like the credit cards and so on. Like it's already easier to buy. You don't have to transfer your crypto into one wallet and then so on necessarily anymore. But still, yeah, I'm excited to see where we're going in that space.
Nice. And Brandon, just in 30 seconds, because I'm being pressured to finish up, what are you excited by?
Yeah, I'm super excited about fans being able to, and sport as a whole, people being on board into sport, whether that's moving, getting involved into your local football club and stuff like that. I strongly believe that Web3 can be the bridge for people to be onboarded to that process. And as I mentioned before, that comes with value and being heard. I've heard my dad, most of my games, yelling at the top of his voice, so he'd be an early adopter in Web3, hopefully. But yeah, value, if we can do that through product, which our brand will deliver, allowing people to actually functionally move better and look good at the same time, whilst being incentivized to potentially earn tokens as well, are all things that we're going to incorporate and we're super excited about as well.
I guess right now, probably most excited about Brandon's Crawley Town FC kit with the chromey squiggle on the front. That's the kind of awareness asset that I like. So I want to know where I can get hold of one of those. But in the broader space, I think loyalty and reward programs is the strongest value prop for NFTs in Web3 with sports. And so social membership, DAOs, and clubs really kind of, looking at that. And I think, what I always say to clubs is start with a free NFT. Give something to your community, and in time, you'll see them give back. So there we go.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone who's watched and listened today, and thanks to our panelists, and thanks, Zebu, for having us.